Welcome back. You are watching The Fix. I'm Karima Brown. Now we look at the weekend papers with former editor of The Star, Kevin Ritchie. Kevin, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I didn't know that I had anything to say these days. Thank you very much.
Well, Peter will kick off this section.
There's life after being an editor, isn't there? I mean,
has to be.
It improves a bit.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, no horrible meetings to go to and difficult journalists. But, you know, what you see in front of you is the result in any newspaper of a whole lot of conversations that occur during the week. What are we going to lead with? What are we going to do this? What's going to happen to this story? Somebody comes along on Saturday and spoils everything or doesn't deliver what they promised to do. How do you think they did, Kevin?
I think you're absolutely right. That was exactly the impression I got, that there was people that went to conference on Saturday morning and thought, oops, the plan hasn't come by.
You don't have a splash.
There's no splashes. I'm fascinated by the Mboweni Mkhubane spat.
On the Sunday Times, yeah.
Because everyone's saying, you know, that the Treasury DG only had a speeding fine. But guys, this is not just a speeding fine. We're not talking about going 80 in a 60 zone. No one's told us what he actually did wrong. I was trying to Google before I walked in here. What do you have to do to get fined 4,750 rand? Sorry, 4,570. That's a huge, huge fine. In fact,
for a speeding fine.
If we looked at it, you probably find that that he might have been able to go to jail. And when you look at it within the context of our horrific road traffic safety, you know, we actually need to look at it. So I wouldn't normally take the public protector's side, but in this case, I think we need to look at it a bit more deeply and not take it at face value. It is a criminal. When you start, I'm not a great expert on criminal law, but when you start looking at I think it's 12 months and below, a jail sentence of 12 months and below, or a fine, is one kind of criminal record.
You're assuming this is assuming jail or with the option of paying a fine?
100%. I think that we need to look into it because we're just assuming, oh, this is just a speeding fine.
Is there a criminal record here now?
Well, there is. At that level, there is. And I think that's the whole issue, is that he never declared that he had a criminal record. A criminal record is a criminal record. I think he should have declared it. If he hasn't, then he'd be in breach. If we turn to the City Press, there's a fascinating story about Fikile Mbalula getting stuck in an editorial meeting on Friday evening. And inside the Sunday Times is a story of the boiler room that's being set up, which is a very cute way. There was Susan Comrie had a fascinating story in the Daily Maverick, I think it was, also on Friday, about the Twitter bots, both of whom I think you guys have had personal experiences of being trolled by these horrific faceless people. So I don't know where the boiler room fits into that, but the City Press, very interesting lead. It's a kind of same old yet again. This is going to be highly contested.
Trying to get its media behind it. Highly
contested elections coming up and wanting to get those levers.
Kevin, I've been following that story very, very closely. I've been speaking with the SABC. We've been speaking to the Media Monitoring Africa Commission, or rather organization. The big issue here is that the board doesn't curate. Now, for us to go into an election with an SABC that has a board that doesn't curate is a huge problem. We've got two commissions of inquiry going on. We don't know the findings of it. The one is the commission into the independence of editorial policy and, of course, the Sex for Pals thing. And then we've got a whole lot of other shenanigans going on at the SABC. What amazes me here is that, you know, the minister put her hand in front of a camera to stop people from filming stuff down in the Eastern Cape. And here the head of elections says that he was having a very pleasant meeting with the SABC, and he didn't think that there was any problem.
They can't stop themselves.
They can't stop themselves.
That's exactly
they don't understand the difference between a state and a public broadcaster.
I mean, you were blacklisted by them a couple of years back.
Well, I worked for them for 9 years.
And then got black. You know, I mean, I think you're exactly right. They can't help themselves, and it just points, I think, once again to the fact that the elections are going to be highly contested, and they're going to get dangerous. And I think that there's a huge, you know, we used to speak, when you and I worked together, we used to speak about the killing fields of KZN. There's that potential in this country all the time for these flare-ups, and it's going to get awful. And that was another thing that I thought that was underplayed, where the two crimes, and perhaps coming from when I was at the Star, I used to get We used to have huge debates around having too much crime on the front page. But this tragedy on Friday night with the, with the lead actor from Matweto, which is, Sibusiso Kunina, and then, of course, the burial of Toriso Temane, who was kicked to death in Polokwane. What kind of society, it's almost like we're scrabbling over the entrails of something where there are far bigger issues at hand, and these stories were buried, and I wondered about that. There's a story in the Sunday Times, a heartbreaking story of Teresa's dad, the pastor speaking about the loss. City Press, or I think it was Sunday World, the funeral. And then, but there's nothing here about the murder on Friday night of Sibusiso Kunina. So you wonder, what kind of, where did the importance lie? So that for me would have been a very important story. I think a bit of a miss.
Yeah.
One of the interesting stories for me, of course, was Peter's column. We've spoken about that already, but right opposite him is a fantastic piece, a layout from, I think, is it the Vice Chancellor?
Yes,
it's the Vice Chancellor of the UJ University, speaking about the mess at Eskom, but in a way that can actually make sense to ordinary people. For the first time, I actually understood, what happened.
I'll see you in Match. I felt exactly the same with this.
But what interested me was we built Kusile and Medupi, and there is nothing like it in the world to compare it with. The engineers that built it is gone. Now, that decision was taken, I think, under the Mbeki administration, if I'm not correct.
By Alec Irwin,
And Alec Irwin was the man who was responsible for that. And that was, of course, at the time when we were supposed to be, it was our time, it was the African century.
Yes.
We were going to do everything the best and the biggest and so on. And now it's costing us a fortune. They say ash is covering Medupi. What do you make of that story? But more importantly, just the mentality of government around things like securing energy, because it is so vital for our economy. It is so vital for ordinary people. We know one of the things the ANC always lays claim to is that it provided electricity for 2 million people that were just not able to get it. These days, most of us can't afford electricity. But that article was fantastic layout of what exactly is happening at Eskom.
I think that you've put your finger on something. We needed something. We needed it so very badly. But it was so huge that the opportunity for collusion and corruption were overwhelming. Because the next page has Helmut Roma-Heitman speaking about the SANDF and its 25 years.
Great piece.
And also another great piece talking about how well they've done and how we actually needed the equipment. Notwithstanding the different lobbies, we needed these power plants. We shouldn't have perhaps gone as brave, but we were, as you say, contextually at that time, it was a very brave time. We were going to be the best. So we went and got stuff, and now we're sitting with these white elephants.
And, they're kind of sort of white elephants. I'm assured by Eskom engineers that the turbines on all of those, every single unit at Kusile and Medupi are actually turning. No.
Well, that's probably the best news I've heard.
Yeah. No,
well, if we can get the engineers into the country, Peter, and if we can get
they'd have to go through the Department of Labour for permission.
A very important thing that you were saying in your column. Absolutely.
Okay, one of the other things that fascinates me is like you say, it's these killings of people. I mean, we have a 28-year-old actor whose life was about to take off in a beautiful film, killed, in a mugging. We often talk about crime in a way that doesn't want to be alarmist, but Joburg is becoming a really, really dangerous city, isn't it?
I think that we must be very, very careful, especially as media, not to normalize crime.
Yeah.
It should, and I think for a long time in the 90s, we normalized it. Oh, well, it's dangerous. We'll build higher walls. We'll get whatever. We should actually make people... Everybody starts having to call people to account and say, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
We don't want that. When someone commits a crime, we shouldn't turn a blind eye to it. We need to actually start right with ourselves. 2 weeks ago, Panyaza Lesufi got himself he was almost held responsible for what happened at Edenvale. Edenvale was already the high school, just for, for the viewers, where the cars broke in to effectively a school that was already a fort.
Yes.
So now we turn our classrooms into greater forts because he is being held accountable for crime, for having the temerity to put in tablets and IT into schools that didn't have that. There's something deeply, deeply fundamentally wrong with our community.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. Kevin Ritchie, always a pleasure speaking to you. That's your fix, of course, for the week. Take care. See you again next week, Sunday.